Hello there, community. Welcome to DevCentral Connects. As always, I am Jason Rahm, whether we're doing DevCentral Connects or not.
And I was going to say, you are always Jason Rahm.
I play him on TV, but no. Yeah. Yes, I'm Jason Rahm. To my right, John Wagnon.
And I'm always John Wagnon. It's crazy, whether it's Monday or Tuesday or Thursday, DevCentral Connects.
That's right. We got a great show today. We got a couple of awesome guests from the NGINX team that we'll intro here in a few minutes. And we're going to do a recap of the NGINX Sprint conference last week, as well as get a demo on the NGINX App Protect. And so, excited about that. Tony, to your point, it does sound like something that Will Ferrell would say. But for
those that didn't see before, maybe you could say the question.
Oh, yeah. Salutations, community. That's my fancy way of saying hello. So if you guys can pick up that reference at the show, let me know. And maybe I'll send you a t-shirt.
That's right. Or a bottle of DevCentral's own hand sanitizer.
That's right. Well, I have a question kind of to kick this show off, John, and it's in the vein of would you rather.
All right.
And so, John, would you rather troubleshoot your mom's inkjet printer with her over the phone, or troubleshoot an outage that starts to look like you were the cause of it with your boss and your boss's boss hanging behind your shoulder?
Wow. Jason, there's no door number 3, I guess, right?
No door number 3. You've got to pick one of those amazing scenarios.
Man, I don't know. I guess if I had to, my mom tends to be pretty forgiving. If I tell her, hey, Mom, it sounds like the printer's broken, so you're just going to need to go buy a new one. That's always a viable option. So that's pretty good. Although I do like to think if I was troubleshooting the outage with my boss behind my back, then I could just blame it on my coworker and be like, boss, this is starting to look like something Jason Rahm did last week. So, just throw you under the bus. I don't know, probably troubleshoot the inkjet with my mom. Get to talk to my mom a little bit.
Yeah. I've actually had both scenarios before.
Okay, this is a real life thing. This is actually a day in the life of Jason Rahm.
I've actually faced both problems, and I would take my boss and my boss's boss sitting over my shoulder every time.
No problem.
Mostly because I don't like printers of any kind. It's like you work in the industry, and so that immediately for people who don't understand the industry, like, oh, and you become the go-to guy for every single problem. Yep. And printers is one of those things, like, I don't care how much money you pay me, I'm not going to look at printers.
Yeah, it's it's just something you want to stay far away from. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Good stuff.
I can't deal with bosses, but I can deal with mom.
There you go. Yeah, Anis Ali, I love it, man. Great.
Yep.
Great thinking there.
Yep, and good to see you again. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, it's great to see you, man.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, we have a couple great guests from NGINX team.
Yep.
I think that we should go ahead and get into this.
Yeah, let's get right to it. I think it's going to be exciting.
All right. So we have with us today Rob Whiteley.
Hello.
That's right. Rob, great to see you.
And Daniel Edgar.
Hey there.
How are you guys?
It's good. Can't complain. I'm facing a sunny window, though, so I'm squinting. I'm not squinting at you. I'm squinting at the sun. It's rare these days.
Yep. It's a good problem to have, though, right? It's fantastic. So you guys did, I said you guys, I guess the collective we had NGINX Sprint, and that was last week, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So Rob, maybe you could give us a quick little overview of what is NGINX Sprint and what were some of the main kind of, takeaways from it?
Sure. Yeah. So every September, NGINX does its user and community event, which we lovingly refer to as conf, which is a nice tongue-in-cheek reference to the configuration file.
Nice.
Not conference. That's purely coincidental.
Of course.
And this year, for obvious reasons, we couldn't do one. It's an in-person event. So like everyone else in the world, we said, we should probably not do it in person. Let's do it virtual. But we should also not call it Conf, because Conf is sort of a brand onto itself for us. So we came up with Sprint because, like most people, we're getting a little bit of virtual event fatigue. So we wanted it to be really light, quick, snappy. You could attend almost like you would a daily stand-up. And so that was kind of how it was born as NGINX Sprint. So we wanted to keep the best of the in-person event, lots of technical content and demos, but then add to it some things in a virtual format that we couldn't really do, like make it free and available to everybody. So that was pretty cool. We got a good showing last week. We sort of broke it up into 3 chunks, 3 days. Each day was about 2 hours long. So day 1 was kind of the news, what's new in the NGINX tech space. Day 2 was a demo. It was basically one long demo that was made up of 6 different components. Daniel will be going through part of that today. And then day 3 was actually the results of a hackathon. I actually have a dirty little secret. NGINX, which has been around quite a long time actually, has never done a hackathon before.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure our open source credentials would be revoked if the community knew that.
But you have now, though, right, Rob?
We have. Yep, we've earned our stripes.
Love it.
So no, we did a hackathon. It actually kicked off before the event and went for 3 straight days, and then we just did the results. And so that was fun. We did it under the NGINX for Good, which is a initiative we kicked off during COVID. But basically the request from the hackers was just build an application that would be helpful in your community, find a problem, and use NGINX tech to solve it, and we'll make it true for a year. So we'll give them the expertise and the funding to host that application. And we ended up choosing 4 winners. So we're going to try to bring 4 different kind of cool apps to market.
That's really awesome.
That's super awesome.
And are those, so I was looking through the results show, are I guess the solutions themselves going to be hosted on a GitHub page somewhere, or just linked to where can we find the winning hackathon?
Yeah, so they won't necessarily be in the NGINX GitHub, but it will be. We're asking them all to put it in GitHub. We're asking them to just talk about their experience. They'll all eventually go live in AWS. AWS was kind enough to partner with us on that to help with the hosting cost. And then we'll be donating more the manpower. We really wanted to use NGINX Unit as the backbone of the demo, which is a newer NGINX application server. It's a polyglot application server, and not everyone has let's just say their unit skills are not as sharp as their NGINX skills. And so we wanted to make sure that we made our technical experts available. And so, yeah, basically the challenge was use Unit to host the app, and then put NGINX in front of it to secure it and scale it, and then let your mind go from there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's a great thing. So, I mean, it sounds like it was a success. It was a sprint, and I love the thought that, you're right. Everyone's kind of got the fatigue of everything's virtual nowadays, goodness, going to get some food, it seems like that's virtual, whatever. So it's it's kind of cool. It was a kind of a quick, but quality over quantity is kind of what I'm hearing, in terms of content and, experience here with Sprint. That's super cool.
Well, I like the idea of a hackathon for good, because hackathons by themselves, it's good to build your own skills and help the people in the room or virtual room to help build their skills, but also to help others on top of that in your community. That's a good thing. And
yeah, I mean, there are some cool ideas like a job finder application to help people connect. We've didn't make it to the final results showing, but there was a lot of local hospital community, how to check waiting times, the kind of stuff that I think some of it related to the pandemic, but some of it just helping understand from a community perspective what we can do. I think it was pretty uplifting. We were hopeful it would go this way, and sure enough, a lot of people brought their creative energies to bear. Yeah,
I remember seeing one a few years ago where it was maybe it was down in San Francisco, somewhere in the Bay Area. They were building an app to help the homeless find restaurants or grocery stores that were about to dump their food, and it's going to go in the garbage if you don't come get it. So it's kind of matching people up to resources that would otherwise, due to requirements and all that, get dumped. And that was
Nice.
Yeah, super cool.
All right, so Sprint. I was preferable to not conf. I kind of thought Lindsay's not conf. I like that, Lindsay Shaw, who kind of kicked off the Sprint last week. But in Gus's talk, he mentioned 3 barriers to speed to market. What are those barriers, and where is NGINX kind of filling gaps to help break down those barriers?
Yeah, sure. So that was based on a lot of our experience over the last 12-ish months. He broke it down into 3 buckets: teams, tools, and technology. I think the idea there is on the teams front. We know that developers are the front end of a lot of digital transformation, and a lot of it's about making developers go as fast as they can, but they aren't always empowered with the ability to pick the right tools, or on the other hand, they're empowered too much and they can pick whatever tool. So you end up, the analogy we always use here is it's like running with scissors. You're not supposed to do it, but you kind of have to in this case, right? And so, but by the way, the developer is the child and your app is the scissors, I think.
Yes.
But the idea is you're making
at least it's not a long sword, right? At least it's scissors.
Well, some developers may run with swords, but the idea is, we rather than yell and say don't do that, say, okay, well, maybe we can pad the room or put some guardrails in place to make it a little bit safer to run with those scissors. And I think that's just, again, there's a lot of pressure to go fast, and so that was kind of sort of step one, is how do you create a self-service environment where developers have access to tools they actually want to use, but in a way where there's some of the governance and operations in place that once it's in production, we're not falling on the sharp end of the scissors, right? So that's kind of the first. The second one around tools is just automation, which may not sound too exciting, but I think what we've seen is that historically, the way companies got any kind of speed was to ruthlessly standardize. This is our environment, this is our application, this is our blessed cloud on a blessed VM. And I think those days are kind of gone. And so instead of trying to force everyone to one kind of stack or one standard, let's just automate as much of the human latency out of the equation as we can, and allow people to pick up speed that way, right? So developers on the front end developing the cool stuff, DevOps are on the back end automating it so that we don't have to have delays in getting that to market. And then I think finally on the technology front, the main point he just wanted to make there is we have a lot of complexity in our tools now. There's a lot of sprawl, and I think COVID has unfortunately created a little bit of a technical debt that a lot of companies are accumulating, and for all for the right reasons. Many companies are facing kind of existential. We were a brick and mortar store, and now we have to be an online business overnight. And so you roll something out that you're going to probably live with past the wisdom of some of those decisions. And so how do we create it so that 6-12 months down the road we can port that application to maybe a bigger, better, more stable environment? And so all of those are things that are sort of near and dear to our heart here at NGINX, in terms of just kind of taking the types of technologies you need to make an app secure or to make it more scalable, and basically decoupling it from the underlying infrastructure so that you can A, get the speed, B, automate it, and then C, make it portable, so that if you chose cloud A today but needed cloud B tomorrow or across 2 clouds, that's all possible. So that was kind of his he probably said it more eloquently, and he definitely said it in an Australian accent.
The
Which is one of my favorite.
Yeah. that just adds, you could just recite the phone book. Do we even have phone books anymore? Whatever. And it would sound fantastic in the accent. No, that was a great recap. That's super, super helpful.
Yeah. So, and Sydney came right after him, Sydney Rabsat. He listed in his talk about what NGINX is and what it's not. And, he listed off a whole bunch of stuff on both sides. Is there anything that he spoke to that you're particularly proud of as a member of NGINX?
Yeah, I think one of the most important ethos that's kind of in all of NGINX's products, including the App Protect demo you'll get soon, is to keep it fast and lightweight and as close to the app as possible, right? And so I think that was kind of between his what it is and what it is not. It was sort of a reminder that, hey, yes, we're part of F5 now, but we're sticking to that core design philosophy of fast and lightweight and making sure that we can make it as developer friendly, CI/CD friendly as possible. So I think it's a good reminder. I mean, one of the critiques we've had from the community is, are you going to change direction? Are we going to see an NGINX appliance? And the answer is, do you want one? No. The answer is, we're going to keep to kind of that core. And if anything, we've been able to accelerate. And so kind of what Sydney then kicked off is a whole list of new tech that we've brought to market that wasn't possible when NGINX was just a standalone company. But now we have a lot more resource and investment. And so we're seeing even in the open source space, we're able to increase velocity there, as well as the kind of the commercial side. So it was a good kind of balance from that perspective. But I'm glad that he reiterated kind of our core design philosophy.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was looking at the in his list the minimum footprint. I want to say the code base is somewhere around 330K.
It's about 200,000 lines of code. It compiles down to about 2 megs.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a version of it that fits on a floppy disk.
Oh wait.
Google that, kids.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
I'm using a green screen, so it'll look kind of funny. But if you kids remember these? Oh,
Check it out, Daniel.
I don't have a machine that can use it, but it's obsolete. Yeah. That's awesome.
Well,
you need a dongle on a Mac to get to whatever, right?
True.
You need a dongle for everything.
I can send you guys
desktop tchotchkes.
We do have a Raspberry Pi that connects to a USB floppy that then boots up NGINX, and you can run a website from a floppy via Raspberry Pi. So maybe we'll ship that kit to you guys.
That would be amazing. We can just leave that running right here during our shows. That
let
would
it
be great.
Crank. Let it crank.
So Daniel, I cut you off. What about you? What are you most proud of from that? What NGINX is, or on the negative side there on what you're not.
I like being able to pay tribute and be involved with the lightweight legacy that is NGINX. I mean, back before I joined F5, I was a developer, and I got to use it as a web server and a proxy server early on, and it's just amazing. And I'm super proud about where we are now because we provide customers more choices. So we separate the what from the why. So an example, which we're going to look at today, is we're going to look at NGINX App Protect, but it's really our F5 WAF technology. But you now have a choice of where you're going to deploy it, right? So you've got ASM, I've got Essential App Protect and F5 Cloud Services. So again, first class protection, but I can choose if I want to do something, in my own data center, one cloud, multi-clouds. If I want to consume it as SaaS service, I have that confidence in that security efficacy at that point. So I really like that we're providing more choices for customers, especially ones that are on doing some sort of a cloud movement without requiring them to lock in any specific clouds. So that felt pretty good this year. Just as we're starting to see the stories converge above last year, after 1 year after the acquisition, we're finally seeing a lot of our security products showing up on the NGINX data plane. And that for me was super exciting. So Shape on the NGINX data plane, our WAF on the data plane, and other things. There's going to be more to come. So super excited about where we're at and what we're able to share with customers and fans as part of that conference.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's a great segue to one of the other things I wanted to talk about from Sydney's talk. Talked about solutions that are really starting to integrate what's going on with Big IP and with NGINX. So is there anything in those joint solutions that excites you?
Yeah, well, one in particular, and for longtime NGINX fans, you'll always know we never had a good global server load balancer story, right? And so one of the things that we benefited from right off the bat is that we can now do GSLB via the DNS cloud service, which fills a key hole in our portfolio. We've always had to partner with it, which is good, but it isn't necessarily the best end-to-end experience. And so now that same technology integrates with Big IP, and so we're getting a much better, I think, end-to-end story between kind of that hardier north-south. NGINX is sort of the lighter weight east-west, sits up closer to the app, and now even across sites or zones with DNS. So that was I think a key one. The other one I would just say, I mean, the WAF one is a great one, but Daniel already took that one, so I can't go that route.
Sorry.
You can second, the WAF.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, +1. And then
One.
the other thing I would just say real quick is one of the cool things we didn't really touch on it too heavily in the conference is from a Kubernetes perspective, there's a lot we can do as well, using NGINX as an ingress controller for sort of getting traffic in and out of the cluster, but have that integrated with Big IP. So Big IP is smart about how it gets traffic. So kind of think of it as, the front door of the building versus the door of an office on a particular floor, right? NGINX is that door into the office on the 3rd floor. F5 is kind of doing the front door and the lobby security and all those capabilities. Wouldn't it be nice if those two things spoke to each other so that when I go into the front door, I can just go right up and not have to go through and tell everybody who I am all over again. So that kind of integration is particularly important because we're seeing a lot more companies actually getting serious about Kubernetes in production.
Yeah, it's actually a good illustration, like moving from the old F5 offices up on Elliott, you had to badge through everything all the time, and moving to the tower where you badge in downstairs and then you have free access to all the F5 floors from there. That's saves a lot of pulling your wallet out of your pocket if you don't like to wear the jewelry around your neck. So
I gotta say, just a super quick soapbox. One of my pet peeves is when I call in to like a company, whatever. Now this is not F5 or anything. This is just whatever, like your credit card or your cable bill or whatever. And they have you validate who you are at the beginning, and then they say, okay, we need to transfer you to a attendant, somebody. And then as soon as you talk to that person, they want everything that you just told the last guy. So it's we've all been there. We feel the pain, right? And so Rob, to your point, it's awesome to have the NGINX parts talking to the F5 parts, and it's a better experience for everybody. That's super cool.
Yep. All right, well, Rob, before we let you go, we got one more thing. In the state of DevOps that Gene Kim talked about, he listed 5 ideals, and then he kind of talked as well about the critical business value for DevOps, and he had a chart in there about the elite of being on demand and being able to push your application multiple times a day versus the monolithic legacy apps where you have an enterprise architecture standard and everything has to align, including the planets, in order to push something once every 6 months to 18 months. And the difference on his chart was like 208 times more frequent when you had a really clear and consistent ability to push daily. And so that was pretty mind blowing from a standpoint of just the true value that DevOps brings. But was there anything in his talk for you that really just, I know you live in this space, but really just kind of opened your eyes as well?
I think there was 2 things, building on what you just said. He had I forget who the exact quote was. It might have been like Rupert Murdoch or something. Is it's no longer about big competing with small, but fast competing with slow. And so in other words, I think the beauty of the era we live in is a 2-year-old startup can compete with a 100-year-old insurance company by offering an app. And it isn't the size and the resource, but rather compete for the customer experience, compete for how quickly we can innovate. And so I think I'm glad that he kind of worked that angle in, because I do think that's probably the challenge that defines kind of our modern era is getting companies to think faster and be able to go faster. So to your point, how often we can change an app is a direct correlation to how quickly we can innovate and make changes. I think that was one good thing. The other thing I would just say is, in general, his talk focused a little more on the human side, which was great. We spend a lot of time geeking out on tech, a lot of time geeking out on the cool things we can do with it. But to me, what resonated with him is even non-DevOps people could probably relate to some of the principles that he was talking about. There was a lot of needing to focus on people and giving value and mission to what we do and how we structure a lot of our work. And to me, it's a good reminder, especially in this virtual world where we're probably finding work-life balance has blurred a little bit and our hours may be stretching, and need to be with family is difficult. And so I thought it was a good message in there. And we had a lot of people reach out to us afterwards and say, I'm actually asking people outside of my team to watch that video because I think they'll be able to take away something from it from a business perspective. So that's always the kind of balance you want to strike in a keynote like that, is it actually has relevance to a broad audience, even though it's speaking to one in particular, and in this case, DevOps.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I tend to focus in on the geek side, but yeah, that human element is important too. What about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I appreciated the human element of what he was talking about. Saying, hey, he's self, identified as a developer these days. And with that, it is really a creative profession. So he was focused on, I want to automate out the commodity things, the pedestrian things, the chores that are really get in the way of that creative profession and keeping the work enjoyable. And he described a few things that were not very fun that he needed to do just to be able to get to the point where he's actually building value and creating applications for his users to use. So he recommended using automation for predictability and whatnot, but also, frankly, to make the job more enjoyable. And that should be the focus of all companies in terms of retaining folks and working sustainably, especially right now with the COVID situation and whatnot, as Rob was mentioning. So I appreciated hearing again also about the human side of work and find ways to keep it sustainable and keep it fun.
Yeah.
I forgot it. You just reminded me. He also admitted he knew what a sidecar proxy was. So he joins the ranks of 10 people that actually understand what those are.
That's right. Yeah.
It's kind of like some thoughts from calculus. I have to okay, what does that mean again? It's I've read the definition several times, and then it's you go away for 2 weeks. Wait, what's that again?
Yeah. What's a sidecar? Maybe we need to do a little video on that.
Yeah,
what in the world is a sidecar proxy?
There you go.
I picture the little motorcycle and all that.
Yeah,
right?
That's what it's named for. Yeah,
that's where it came from. So there is a relation, or a relationship, whatever. But yeah, it's awesome.
Yep. Real quick, Leslie mentioned if anyone's concerned about F5 building security. Yes, of course. I was speaking about general access, not the special compartmentalized access.
Legal disclaimers.
Yep. Thank you, Leslie, for pointing that out.
Awesome. Hey, and I know Catherine had one a second ago about getting the Sprint team presentations onto the YouTube channel. So I know we've referenced a lot of these that have these presentations have been talked about. One we'll get to kind of talk about today, but on the YouTube channel for NGINX. So check it out. Yeah, and Peter's going to drop some links in the chat a little bit later for all the videos that are already out on YouTube. Yeah. And so, Rob, any parting thoughts before we move on to the next segment?
No, appreciate you gentlemen having me. Hopefully this was helpful. Definitely check out YouTube. We also have our Sprinty Fresh swag if you want some.
Check
NGINX.
it out. Yes. And Rob, I dare say that's probably a one of a kind. I mean, how many other sprints are there going to be, right? Maybe, I don't know. If things go back, it's going to be conf again. Is that right?
Yeah,
possibly?
exactly.
So all right, all you viewers, get them while you can.
That's right. And maybe we need to do a little swag bartering. We can send you guys a DevCentral shirt, and you can.
No doubt. I've got this nice mug right here. Whatever. No doubt.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much for being with us today. Appreciate it. And Daniel, we'll see you back here in a second.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. So Daniel, you got some stuff to share with us, but before we get into that, I had a comment from Dave. What updates have you guys made on the WAF? And well, that's exactly what you're going to talk about here. So keep that in mind, and maybe if Dave, you have any follow-up questions once Daniel gets through what he's going to demo for us, then post back.
Love it.
Yeah, happy
Thanks,
to entertain those. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So you ready to get into this? You want me to share screen and get going?
Sure. I'll go ahead and share a screen. Oh, no, you have it. You're sharing the screen. All right. So just a little bit of background, and I'm glad Catherine is volunteering to put up those videos. So unique to Sprint this year, we created a cohesive story that really flowed across 6, 7, 8 demos that built on top of each other. So you're going to essentially see today a repeat of what I did for demo 3 out of that. So before, the security demo, Libby Marin and Timo Stark set up a WordPress app hosted entirely with NGINX Unit, which is very cool as the application server. And on top of that, then James Jones came in and he put NGINX Plus in front of it to handle, heavy lifting, caching responsibilities. What else did he do? Service discovery, and he added a few other things there at that layer, right? And then I came in and added security, because as it turns out, this particular application we built for the demo with this WordPress site, it's all around planet data and whatnot. It's super popular, but turns out as a WordPress app, it has a vulnerability, and I wasn't protecting against it, right? So I need to do something about that because it's getting popular, and I'm not only attracting good attention, but I'm attracting bad attention to my application.
I'm sorry, Daniel, did you say WordPress and vulnerability?
I sure did in the same sentence. Isn't that unusual? Okay.
I'm just shocked.
Yeah.
I'm just shocked. Yeah. And just to be fair, just to kind of clarify for those that may be wondering, this is not something like this is an issue with WordPress. So the fact that you chose WordPress, you've now invited in, and I'm not trying to badmouth WordPress, but you've invited in any kind of vulnerability that they might have inherent, right? So
exactly.
You need to understand that as a person in all this space, that as soon as you choose this platform, boom, you choose all of that platform, the vulnerabilities included. Yep.
Right. And you're right. Exactly. And it's a little unfair to WordPress. It's like their biggest enemy is their popularity. So they're so widespread in terms of a content management platform with the plugin ecosystems, they have become a target for takeovers that people turn into crypto miners and do all, bot armies and things like that. So you not only have to look at vulnerabilities in the platform itself, again, not to pick on WordPress, but also all the plugins you use.
Yeah, the plugin architecture especially.
Yeah, developers write them and they build them on platforms and use code libraries that probably are also open source that they pulled them in. So you've got this giant food chain of dependencies that any one of them could have vulnerabilities. And all it takes is somebody on the web to run a scanner it's not hard at all to determine whether or not you're using WordPress and a particular plugin that might have a vulnerability. So whether or not you know it, any WordPress site you have on the internet today is being actively scanned. So it's important to have extra protection on top of that. So that's the context that we're bringing in this demo.
Nice. I love it. And I love the fact that you guys kind of started at square one and now just built on everything. So
we did. Yeah.
It makes sense. It just kind of flows, I love that.
Well, and it's especially important, especially when you're getting into something for the first time, because most tutorials out there are, they're very narrowly focused on, if you need to do A, here's how you do it. If you need to do B, here's how you do it. But you rarely get here is the breadth of a solution. Let's walk through the whole thing. So that's kudos to you guys for building it that way.
Yeah, and as homework assignment, watch for those videos being posted, because after the security, Liam goes on to do API protection. Rick Salsa comes in and talks about F5 Cloud Services DNS for reliability, the problem that Rob was talking about. And then Forrest and Adil and others talk about F5 Beacon for metrics and visibility on top of that. So it's a very cool series of videos, and I'd love to see us do that again next year in some other format that keep building. But to be able to demo my part, I'm going to be showing a video and essentially be talking through it as that happens, because I don't have the rest of the stuff built out already. So full disclosure. Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah.
So with that, you want to go for it?
Let's do this thing, man. I'm looking at Planet Earth.
I'm ready to grab my popcorn.
Excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We need some popcorn in the studio.
Yeah. I'll work on that. I'll send you some popcorn.
We'll work on that. We need some popcorn. So we need some Sprint popcorn or something.
That's right.
Good to go.
The Sprint popcorn. Okay. I have the Sprint limited edition Sprint vans, but these are not available for swag. You had to do this.
Oh, yeah. Jeff was even also, Jeff's like, I want the Sprint shoes.
I want the shoes.
Shoes.
Do they make you go faster? Daniel.
Of course they do.
Of course they're Sprint.
Yeah. Not too fast because I don't want to trip and end up in the hospital, especially right now. But so I'll just trust that they help you go faster.
Of course. We'll take your word.
Well,
all right.
I'll go ahead and get this going if you guys are okay with it.
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
Here's that application I was talking about. WordPress site with the collection of planets. Nothing new. But as it happens, like we talked about, this application isn't protected. So we need to test that out. And I hope you can see that. But I'm going to attack it somewhat blatantly with a cross-site scripting attack in the URL.
Okay.
The application didn't know how to respond to it, but fortunately, it didn't have a vulnerability in that particular part of the application. Hopefully, you're seeing that in the video. It's not trimmed off up top.
Yeah.
So otherwise, if it had a vulnerability, we'd have an issue, but it didn't. But it also wasn't aware of the activities that were going on in the application's attack surface. So we need to go ahead and look at what it takes to enable NGINX App Protect on this WordPress application. Okay. And so what you're seeing here is my Visual Studio Code, my repository of everything that represents the application today. We have the WordPress site. We have the database that we're using. We have our NGINX Plus instance that we're going to extend with NGINX App Protect. And I've chosen to implement my NGINX Plus application security in a Docker container. And I'm using CentOS 7.4. So my Docker file is going to reference that base. I'm going to use an NGINX certificate key, which is necessary to download the components that are needed for NGINX App Protect's packages. And finally, we're going to install NGINX App Protect. An important thing to highlight here is that in order to be considered a DevOps or automation-friendly tool set, we need to leverage the platform's package management tools natively rather than introducing our own proprietary process. So we're going to install App Protect that way. And we're going to install the latest version of signatures or attack definitions, which is important. We're going to include James's modules for NJS and Prometheus that were used in the demo before me. Again, we're building on that.
Right.
We're going to do some cleanup and run it and install it from the entry point. So already started the container and the rest of our application. We're going to go walk through the rest of the configuration file. So here's the configuration file. Once App Protect's installed, we need to use the load module directive to load it at the top level context once. And that's all we need to do here. Then we need to go into the NGINX LB configuration that we're using in the previous demo and add additional settings. I came in as part of my demo and I added SSL, well, technically TLS protection for the application, as most would want to do that are security conscious. So you're going to see those additional entries here. But right next to that, I have a set of directives related to NGINX App Protect. Up top, I will, though, start with logging first, and I can define logging at a very high-level context in the NGINX configuration for consistency. Obviously, the master switch is here to turn logging on. I'm specifying the logging format, which by default is using kind of like a name-value pair, comma delimited format that we're going to use to ingest into Logstash in the Elk stack later in the demo. So for this first server context, I've shifted from port 80, and I'm going to redirect to 443 because, again, security is important with TLS using those certificate references and ciphers I chose. And that's where the WordPress UI is hosted. So I'm going to introduce the App Protect directives in this context. So first of all, App Protect has an enablement flag for the context in the policy file. This JSON policy file is something I created for the UI portion of the web application. So we can go to that policy file. We're on it now. We can get started now with as little as 4 properties in a JSON file that represent my policy. And JSON files were chosen because it's a lot easier to author, manage, version, and push through your CI/CD pipeline than some other verbose or proprietary formats. So these are ideally stored in your version control system instead of some proprietary configuration store. So I specify the name of the particular policy and its space UI. I'm starting with the application template, which we have one out of the box that's a balance of security efficacy and usability. I'm defining my application's encoding type, UTF-8, and I'm going to start my enforcement mode as blocking. And I'm pretty confident that I can start it in blocking anytime App Protect sees something that looks like an attack, because I'm introducing it early on in my development lifecycle, unlike other products. So before I even write my first line of code, before I extend my application, I have a security policy enabled in my environment. So it's going to work the exact same way during development as it does in production. Was there a question there?
No, I just think that's awesome. You could put it in transparent mode, but to your point, no need, right? If you introduce it early on.
Exactly, and that's how we intend to for this product to be used, introducing it early in the life cycle. But yeah, to your point, if I wanted to introduce it early to see how it was going to behave with the representative sampling of traffic in your UAT environment or even production, if you chose to, you could specify that transparent mode. NGINX App Protect would faithfully report everything that it would block, but it will not actually block any traffic that it determines to be an attack.
Okay.
So those are the most basic options I could specify in this policy file. And once a policy has been enabled, all we need to do is reload NGINX Plus, which is a non-disruptive operation, doing that down there in the container that I'm remoting into via SSH. Going to do that. And once it's reloaded, I'm going to go back over to the browser and re-attempt that same attack.
That same cross-site scripting launch, right?
That's right. Pretty obvious, blatantly. All right. What we're met with here is what we call the default block page. The requested URL was rejected because NGINX App Protect found it to be a threat. And this should look familiar for those that are familiar with ASM. So it immediately blocked it, preventing the request from going to the backend servers, as we saw in our diagram earlier. That was from the demo. You have to go watch the video to see the diagram. But it also presents a support ID, and it becomes important from an ops perspective. So if you ever need to do some correlation between what a user might see with the detailed security events in your analytics system. So I want to introduce right here a dashboard we make available for NGINX App Protect. And it's part of the Elk stack. It's a Kibana dashboard. And it's free download. It's on GitHub. In there, you can look at the various things related to how people are using or misusing your system that's protected with NGINX App Protect. In my case, I've configured it to send all requests. So whether the outcome is clean, meaning nothing wrong with it, if it's alerted, which is suspicious requests, but not severe enough to be blocked, then there's blocked, simply, which is based upon the high confidence of an attack. So you can see what I had blocked here with my cross-site scripting tag. And I filtered based upon that. And I have my client IP as the attacker in the top violators stack chart, since I was the only one that had access to it. In addition, which attack signatures or patterns of malfeasance were detected by App Protect. And then those roll up into what we call violations, shown onto the right, something a little more human readable than a signature. So the particular violation that we're seeing here is an attack signature detected. Illegal meta character was in the value, right? And there's a violation. So what did we do about it? We're going to explore that attack. So we opened up that slash request. We saw the signature. In here, we're going to find enough information to help you make an educated decision as to whether or not you want to continue to block these kinds of attacks or make some changes to your policy based upon your application's needs. So in this case, it was pretty obvious that I was doing something I shouldn't have done. So I probably won't make any particular changes to this setting. But at this point, I can see the date, the time, the target port, the name of the particular policy, source IP address, location, the raw message that came in from NGINX App Protect, what App Protect did about it, and why in this case it rejected it. So in this particular user saw that block page because it was up to no good. And then there's that source request. My script tag, as you saw, it was encoded by the browser before sending it. And most importantly, I have that support ID that we talked about from the block page. So again, I could go search my dashboard to figure out, okay, why was this particular request blocked, in case you need to make a tweak to the application or the policy. Again, hopefully early in your development and testing life cycle, so there's no disruption.
Yeah. And the reality is you will have false positives, right? You will have things that you need to tweak. And because this isn't a set it and forget it, like Ron Popeil, this is a relationship that you have with your firewall, right? And so it's great that there's a baseline that you can start on. It's like, I'm going to block a lot of stuff, but I might trigger some stuff I shouldn't block, and I'm going to miss some stuff I should. And so it's a relationship.
Yeah, and I guess an example of that I even experienced back when I was using ASM as a customer. a WAF's job is to look for bad behaviors, look at for signatures of exploits and things like that. But it's also going to enforce things like RFC compliance, right? Mm-hmm. So if I have an application that's misusing headers in the request or response somehow, it's going to block that. And it might do that by default, depending on where you're starting and how loose your policy is. So these days, browsers are pretty darn tolerant. So if my browser allows a certain, something to happen in terms of a request and response that my application is producing, I might need to instruct the WAF that, hey, in this case, my application just works that way. I'm not going to go change the code. You need to relax that part of it. So you're not being attacked. It's okay. So we need to be able to provide the means to be able to do that. So how would I do that in this case? I'm going to go back using that name in the log, go back to my named policy in my source control system. And I need to go back and make changes in my configuration file, redeploy it for my application, right? So one of those kind of customizations I can do is, let's be honest, I'm not really crazy about this white block screen. And I realize probably only bad people are going to see this up to no good, but I may want to make changes to it anyway. So fortunately, yeah, you can. The place where you go and customize those is, unsurprisingly, in that JSON policy file. So what I've received from my branding folks is a version of my homepage that I'm actually going to use as my blog page and inject that customized message with that support correlation ID into it. So it's been introduced in the policy, and it's a big mess of HTML, which we're not going to go through in detail, but I'm introducing a custom blog page. So I'm going to introduce content that says something like, oops, something strange has happened, but I'm embedding that support ID right in the response page. Yeah. And also beyond that content, I can control the HTTP status code as well as other caching settings and things like that when a block event occurs. So I'm going to go ahead and save that file off, and I'm going to reload NGINX, and we're going to go back and attempt the same kind of attack.
While you're doing that, do you know if that capability is configurable for like a normal request versus like something that comes in through an AJAX call?
Oh, we're going to get to that.
Cool.
Good segue. Yeah. So here we go. Until my NGINX connections bleed off, I need to open it up in a new tab because previous connections have been persisted with the previous version of the policy. But there we go. We see our new block page, and I'm able to retain the same theme that my corporate guidelines are kept in check and all that. I have a custom message here in case you experience problems with that correlation ID to be able to look into it later. Again, helping the ops side of the house. Yeah. So again, as you mentioned, Jason, that's all well and good, or John, I remember who it was. So for applications that emit HTML markup, but earlier I mentioned that App Protect is built for modern applications, right? So with that, we need to recognize how developers are going to be writing their apps. Many modern apps, such as this WordPress site, use API calls to the back end. So this is a JavaScript-enabled app that makes API calls to the back-end server, not expecting markup. So the app's not going to be able to react very well when a call is made that returns HTML when it's expecting JSON. So I probably want to customize that App Protect response for the API call. And I've introduced our variant to a policy called an API security policy. And you'll notice some differences here. We have a response page block, but it's much, much smaller. And in this case, I'm responding with JSON because that's what the browser is expecting in its response. So I'm responding with an object payload that the application is expecting with just some different text, again, embedding that support idea in there as well. I'm also responding with a 529 service unavailable response code, so my app can respond to it in order to provide a good experience for the users while providing essential security for the application. So we need to go back to our conf file, and for the API, which was served up on port 85, I'm going to reference that new file that I've created again, and I've stored in my Git repository. So I'll comment it out, saving the file, reloading NGINX. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to go back to the application, and I'm toggling through the planets, right? At this point, I want to be able to intercept that API call to the back end, which is a known way to target vulnerabilities back-end application. So I'll be introducing Chrome developer tools to help with that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the location in JavaScript where it's making that particular call to load the planet data. So next time I cycle through it, I'll have the ability to intercept it. So I'm going to go backwards on Venus to the previous planet. And the selected planet being loaded is Mars. It's supposed to be loaded through an API call to the back end. Yes, I'm aware the planets aren't in order for this site, but I can fix that. What I'm going to do at this point, instead of just passing the planet Mars the API, I'm going to try to overload that variable. And I'm just going to append a different kind of attack, this time called a SQL injection attack as a parameter, just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be blocked by our policy. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to send the request on its way. And as you can see at the bottom there, that 529 response was returned by that API call. And if I extend this out a little bit, we'll be able to see the actual HTTP call and see what happened. For that particular API call to Mars, you'll notice that SQL injection attack was in the URI there. And what did we get back? We got back properly formatted JSON markup. So the application can understand it on response to provide, again, a good user experience that's customized for my application, but is still providing protection against violations. So as you can see with the demo, we're able to add application protection to the NGINX Space WordPress site in a matter of minutes, really, in a non-disruptive way. And I, as the developer, can be in control of that security policy at all times. Again, making it so I can deploy my application smoothly without any unnecessary friction. So really, that's the end of the demo, guys.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
It's super awesome. Super awesome.
I do have a question from Amit. So is App Protect working only signature-based? Is it working with allow list perspective like ASM?
It is beyond signatures, yes. So there's the notion of positive security in there as well. Allowed parameters, allowed attributes, allowed entities, as well as IP addresses, things like that. So a lot of the ASM features are in there, and more are coming. So beyond signatures, now with the newer version of NGINX App Protect, this is kind of relating to what was talked about earlier. I can import a JSON schema file or an Open API or Swagger file. Mm-hmm. It will create a policy around that for my API to enforce that only specific URIs are used. Status codes are going to be in an expected list. What else? Verbs that my application, my API supports, but also more importantly, the shape, including parameters and types associated with the JSON objects that can be sent on request and on response. NGINX App Protect can enforce those. So really excited about that feature because that finally allows me, if I'm building an application, chances are I get that Swagger spec or that Open API spec for free out of my framework. And I literally just need to wire it up to App Protect. And when it compiles that policy, it goes, you know what? These are the only things I'm going to allow for that API. So that, again, is the ultimate way to add, again, that notion of positive security on a down to a parameter basis without having to do a whole lot of learning or manual work. So super excited about what we're able to do for modern applications within that space inside NGINX App Protect.
Yeah,
that's really exciting stuff, and that was a cool demo. I appreciate you sharing that with us, and I'm excited to go back actually and watch the demo soup to nuts from beginning to the end, and watch how everything gets built out.
Yeah,
I think you'll enjoy them. Great.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, I know you talked and Rob did earlier about deploying App Protect as close to the app as possible, and that's something that's really unique and powerful about NGINX App Protect. You can deploy it on the edge. You can deploy it in ingress controller, microservices, all the different options. So super cool.
Yeah. One of the things I like about that, just real quick, associated with that is I can literally introduce this before I write my first line of code. If I'm completely disconnected up on a mountaintop and I have this on my laptop, I'm going to have that security policy working right, immediately. So not only closer to the app, but closer to the application developers and early on in the life cycle. So this is quite a bit different. But I know that once I deploy it, I've introduced it early on, but once I deploy it, I know it's going to behave the exact same way as it did in Dev, as it will in Azure, as it will in AWS, as it will in Google Cloud or in my own on-premises data centers. So I like the consistency and the workflow that App Protect provides by getting out of the way.
Yeah, I love it. I know there was kind of this famous, security. Do we bolt on security at the end, or do we bake it in? Is it part of? So we don't want to bolt it on. We want to bake it in. Yep. And this is the very practical way in my mind that this is how you do that. This is such a powerful way to do that. So I love it. Even before you write your first line of code, security is baked in.
Yep.
That could be a cool tagline. Do we need to register that or? Okay.
I say let's just go for it. Let's just use it, and copyrights, whatever.
Yeah. Brand and legal are like, no.
Brand, yeah. Although we just had a whole brand discussion about your response page there. My only question is Pluto included in the list of planets, Daniel?
I'm going to focus, leave that debate for later, version 2.0 of the application. I think probably a priority. Getting the planets in order, I think would probably be better.
Then maybe we'll do that first, and then we'll decide what planets are planets.
I think you're ready for a career as a statesman.
Yeah.
Let me not answer your question and speak words.
Let me dodge that.
I love it. No, that's fantastic, man. Really solid stuff.
Yeah. And
really
super appreciate you being here. Any parting words before we close up shop here?
No, just thanks for inviting me on the show. And again, be sure to check all those resources related to Sprint and the many different ways you can secure your applications using F5 technology. So thanks very much for the invite today. Really appreciated it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel.
Man, those NGINX guys were awesome. That was good.
Super smart, and so well spoken. And yeah, man, it's always a pleasure to have those guys on. And I don't know, you just learn something new every time.
Yeah.
So Daniel and Rob, really appreciate it.
Yep. And one of the things that they brought up when we were talking about the deployment frequencies and stuff that kind of stuck with me is that when you do something frequently, you worry about failure less.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about when you set up an HA environment and your standby just sits there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a failure. If you don't test that standby works and you have a failure, sometimes your HA isn't so
it's still standing by.
Exactly. And so even if you are in the infrastructure side, you're in an HA environment, testing is important.
Mm-hmm.
But infrastructure has changed over time to where you have like our device services clustering, where you have active standby or what. So you kind of in a scenario where your traffic group is standby, but all the devices are doing something.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that confidence that something's working.
Yeah.
And with multi daily deployments, whether it's just the application itself or the security that sits on top of it, you have an assurance that what you're doing works.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to be said for that.
Oh, it's a critically important point. It's true of anything, not even in application development or security or whatever. It's the more you do something, the higher the better you feel about it, the higher chance of success, just all that stuff. So yeah,
that familiarity breeds confidence. Is that
exactly? All right, so I know we're like right at the hour or whatever, but I gotta circle us all the way back to the beginning and say salutations. That's my fancy way of saying hello. And I know you didn't ask me that, but I do. I want to figure out where that comes from, or I don't know if anyone actually.
Nobody weighed in. So
anyway,
what is your answer?
My initial thought was Charlotte's Web.
Ding, ding, ding.
All right,
so
man.
Circle gets the square. Go back to
winner,
chicken dinner.
Good to go, man.
Yeah.
All right. That's just the first thing.
Yeah.
Charlotte was saying to the pig. I don't even remember all the characters, but yeah.
Oh, I know them all because that was my little sister's movie. That VHS tape got itself wore out.
Right out.
I still think I know the entire movie. Like I could sing every song, quote every line. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Well, maybe on that note, we will say salutations and greetings. And I don't know, can you use salutations both ways?
I think so.
Hello and goodbye. It's like aloha in Hawaii.
Right.
So if Priscilla's still out there, aloha, my man. So salutations, greetings, and goodbyes to all of you. It's always awesome to connect here on DevCentral Connects every Thursday, 12:30 Pacific. Hey, next week, I'm going to be at the helm with the security sidebar. And we've got a really cool guest. October, by the way, kicks off National Cyber Security Awareness Month, and we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff around cybersecurity, and it's going to be a great time. So tune in next Thursday, 12:30 Pacific.
All right, John, it's been a pleasure,
Jason.
And I
always
look forward to watching your show next week. Thanks, everyone. Community, we'll check you later.
We'll see you then.